The following conversation is for educational purposes only and not intended to replace therapy or other mental health services. Viewer discretion is advised.
Avoidance, I think, is coping. Because what are you trying to avoid? Probably a feeling of negativity. My brother, before he passed, he said something to me that I've been thinking about a lot. John, he said, all you know how to do is work a job and have a girlfriend. I almost was kind of proud of it. But I hear it now and I'm like, yeah, what he was trying to say is like, you don't make enough time for me. It's not necessarily my fault, but I think it's super important to not just wipe all your mistakes under the rug and be like, I forgive myself. I didn't know any better. No, think about those things.
We have a new guest here. I'm excited to have you on. Dylan, thank you so much for making the time to be on here. And I would like to ask a lot about what brings your community to life. And I know you have a community of your own, but we'll get into that. Welcome to the show, man.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Absolutely. And first of all, before we've had an opportunity to chat beforehand, as I normally do with guests, and I've also done a little bit of digging into what it is that you like to share, and I know one of the conversation pieces was your brother's story, right? And so, what if you don't mind me asking about that? What motivated you to share his story?
Honestly, the first post that I put on Instagram, I really put it out just because I was kind of tired of people, saying, hey, let's hang out. And they don't have any idea what's really going on with me personally. And, there's acquaintances that we have that we're very close with that know the day-to-day of our lives. And then there's friends that are like in town once in a while you go see. And I put out a post and I just said, basically to my friends, like I've had this horrible thing happen. My younger brother took his own life and he's left me with this letter and this legacy to live. And from there, it kind of just took a hold and took off. So what inspired me in the beginning wasn't necessarily even to get his story out. It was just that people could understand where I was coming from. And once I got that post out and I was, a lot of great response online, a lot of people sharing their own stories, I realized that I had this responsibility to tell my brother's story and to talk about who he was and the things that led him down the path that he ended up going down.
What can you say about your brother? What is it that you remember best of him?
At his memorial service, something that really stood out to me and always sticks out to me is that he was the kind of guy that would always help people move. And that is really one of the biggest compliments you could give somebody, because if my friends are like, hey, I'm moving, I'm like, I'm not going to be there. I'm out of town. Like, I'm busy. Like, I'm not helping with that. But all of his friends went up there and said every time we had to move an apartment, every time we had to, try and get somewhere else, he was always there to help. He helped move me into my apartments. He was just that really consistent person who was always there. Another thing that really stuck out about him is that he always asked people, how are you doing? And that's not something you really see with people who are really young. And he'd been doing that from a young age. He'd be 10 years old and go up to the front desk person and say, hey, how are you doing today? What's going on with you? And I think that's really the best way to remember him, is someone who's always contributing and someone who's always curious about others.
When you say that he's been doing that from a young age, when did you start noticing that?
It's just earliest memories. It's just, he was always there. I can't even pinpoint a time. That's just who he was.
First of all, just to clear things up for people watching, what are the age differences between you guys?
Sure. So, I was born in 2001. He was born in 2004. So, the different birthdays and change, but basically about 4 years, okay. 3 to 4 years.
How many siblings do you have? Was it just you two?
I have an older brother as well.
You have an older brother.
He was born in 99. So kind of a mix of ages there.
So you're the middle child.
I am the middle child. Yes.
Do you relate to the saying that the middle child is kind of like the one that it gets the least attention as a kid?
I've never really related to it that way. I think a lot of people kind of lean into like the middle age, middle child, and like the differences. For me, it's never really been that way.
What would you describe your relationship like with all of your siblings?
Me and my older brother, just like any, older, younger brother, been through things. And one of the things I've realized about life is the more that you forgive somebody for something, the closer you get. And I've forgiven him and he's forgiven me for a lot of things, just sibling stuff that we've been through. So our relationship now. We've been going to the gym together, and I think that's been a silver lining, is that we've gotten a lot closer through this loss.
Do you think that it's made you have, how did it impact your conversations?
With him or just
yeah,
in
with
general?
your older brother? Yeah.
Just, I mean, talk a lot about John and talk a lot about the different events that led to his life ending, and a lot of it's about him, and a lot of it's just about our shared interest of running. So our conversations before were kind of brief, just like, hey, what are you doing? But I call him every day now. We talk at least once, twice a day, and there have been periods in our relationship where we didn't talk for a few weeks at a time. So the conversations maybe are a little bit more intense, but they're definitely more frequent as well.
I think one of the challenges is, especially because of how young, because you guys everybody's still pretty young, 99. That means that he is, what, 26, your oldest brother?
Yep.
And so to experience that, everyone's still in their 20s. There's like a reality check that I'm sure happened for everybody. And
absolutely.
You described it just briefly just now about I don't think we checked in enough. I don't think we've had enough conversations. I don't think we've talked enough about how we're doing. Has that been your experience?
Yeah, when you're in your early 20s, especially I'm college educated, I went to university, and I feel like a lot of the conversations that you're having with people are either surface level or more current events based. And when people want to talk to you and they want to tell a story, it's usually about something interesting that happened. Like, oh, I was at the Pilates class, or I was at the gym, and people want to talk about interesting things. And I think we find it hard to be interested in the mundane day-to-day things that are going on in people's lives. So people aren't really talking about, how am I doing? Let me tell you about my struggles or my problems or my addictions. People are just going to tell that funny story about the gym or, P. Diddy or whatever's in the news. And I don't blame them for that. I definitely was that type of person before. And for me, it's a little bit harder to engage in those conversations now because they seem a little vapid and a little less meaningful.
Right. And to be fair, and that's true, there's surface conversations because conversations like this, even the one that we're having now, I'm sure there's some level of discomfort and some of the questions that I'll ask as well is like, it's because those conversations are difficult that we'd rather just do the surface thing, or you'd rather just talk about current events and talk about things happening in other people's lives. But because we have that, when things like this happen, there's that like, okay, yeah, we definitely can't ignore that. You know what I mean? And that seems to have been the case here with you. And it seems over and over again. I mean, that's what happened with me. At some point in my life, I had enough things happen where there came a point like, okay, not talking about it isn't an option.
Yeah, absolutely.
So then let me ask you this. What was it like for you growing up? What is it that what was your childhood like?
Yeah, I had a very privileged upbringing, I would say, relative to most people. Had both my parents. That's something that a lot of people don't have. And, there are problems in every household, and every household has things that happen that are horrible and things that happen that are amazing. But, I had both my parents. They provided for us. They made sure and always prioritized education. And education was really something that was drilled really substantially into us from a very young age. We were always involved in sports, very athletic family, football, sports, school. That was really our childhood, I would say.
And then do you think that those sports and all that kept you out of trouble as a kid?
For me, I would say I was never really, I didn't like trouble. I stayed out of trouble just because I didn't want to be in trouble. And, everyone's going to get in trouble a couple of times, but my younger brother, John, he was a great athlete, captain of the basketball team on the varsity for a couple of years. He was really tall. He was a great basketball player. I think for him, in reading his writings after he died, he talks about how it kept him alive. And that's something very, maybe not out of trouble and like, criminal trouble, but just mental trouble, just clearing your mind and trying to be part of a team. So I think for him, it definitely helped him.
And for you, what was the effect it had on you?
I've always loved working out, lifting weights. It just was a great outlet for me for teenage angst and just that general anxiety feeling that we all feel. It was a great outlet for me. And to this day, I really continue that. I'm very disciplined with working out. And right now, running is my greatest passion. So I think it was great to have sports growing up because it lays that foundation for here's something positive you can do for yourself that's going to, help you manage your anxiety and just help you feel better.
Now, I'm going to ask you a question, and it's okay if you're not sure if the answer is I don't know.
Sure.
Let me think about it. But how have you been taking care of yourself since?
Well, you go through phases. You go through phases of taking care of yourself. And I remember the first week after the loss, you just almost forget to take care of yourself. And I had an aunt, and she would message me every day, and she'd just say, make sure you drink water. And I never realized how wise that piece of advice was because she's been through loss and she realized that she stopped drinking water, whenever something happened. And as soon as I started drinking water, that was just like the first step of like, oh, I need to shower again. I need to drink water. And when I get messages from people on Instagram, like I just lost my brother the same way. The thing that I tell them actually is just at least try and drink water and shower. And taking care of yourself, people want to hear some elaborate self-care routine. But just keeping the basic hygiene is something that's very difficult in the early stages. And once you get past that early stage of, okay, now I'm back to maintaining, good hygiene and good hydration, then you go into like the coping phase of like, wanting to eat whatever you want to eat. I was eating a ton of ice cream all the time. Like I'm talking like a whole gallon every day for like 30 days straight because it was just something to do. But as time has evolved and as things have continued to move on, the way that I take care of myself now, there are really three big pillars. Number one, meditation. I try and meditate every single day. That practice varies. Some days it's going to be an hour. Some days it's going to be 3 minutes. But just doing something every single day. Breathwork routine is something that I also am always practicing. I've practiced this before, but I've just really committed to it. And then just getting outside. So those three things are what I would say is the base of my self-care to try and make sure that I feel okay through this period.
And let me ask you, what can you tell me about that day, about how that unraveled? How can you walk me through what that experience was like?
Absolutely. So I was working. I was at my job and I was a lifeguard. And when you're a lifeguard, you're not supposed to be on your phone. That is a big, big no-no. And I really follow that rule pretty, like, why would I risk anyone's life? So I'm not on my phone. And then I go to the break room and you're not really supposed to check your phone on your breaks either. And I hadn't checked my phone for a couple of breaks. And then at some point in the day, I was like going to use the bathroom. I go to the bathroom. I take out my phone. First thing I see is a bunch of missed calls from a bunch of different people, like right away. I was just very confused. Like, why is everybody trying to get a hold of me? Mm-hmm. And then I just called back the most recent missed call that I had. And they're like, something's happened to John. And they didn't want to tell me what had happened. They, I think, wanted to wait for me to get to the scene and try and tell me in person. And I was like, something happened. Okay. I get off that call. I check my texts and I have a text from my older brother. And he had told me that, John had decided to end his own life and that it was over.
I'm sorry that you had to experience that. I don't think anybody ever dreams of that, ever hopes, ever imagines something like that. So the fact that, first of all, that you're doing this, I think that it's important that I say this, that the courage it takes to speak about it in whatever way you are capable of is immensely courageous, and you deserve the recognition for that. And I'm sure that, and I know that you know this, that your brother would be very proud of what you're doing.
It's very interesting you say that, actually, because my older brother will joke with me like, and it's in a funny way, but that, he'd be rolling in his grave if he knew I was on Instagram talking about him this much. My brother didn't really like attention like that. And he didn't like to be talked about like this. And I have thousands of messages from people talking about how proud, my brother would be. And for some people that may move them to positive emotion or whatever it may be. But for me, it doesn't really do much. And there's nothing wrong with that. Like if he's proud of me, if he's not proud of me, I just have to be proud of myself. And he lived the life that he was living, led him down a path that was tragic and horrible. And I don't think he had a right mind about what to be proud of and what not to be proud of. So if I think of it through the lens of would he be proud or not be proud, it doesn't do much. It's more like, am I proud of myself? When I put my head on that pillow to go to sleep at night, can I be okay with what I'm doing? And do I feel good about who I'm becoming and what I'm putting out into the world? So I appreciate that. And I think it's important that we say that, because I've talked with other people who have been through something like this. And as much as we would like to think like they'd be proud of us, maybe they wouldn't,
It's a fair point. I think that of course, even if you didn't like it, being yourself is something that is worth being proud of, like you mentioned.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And so I do think that it is, maybe you're right. Maybe he would be, maybe he wouldn't be, but that you're talking about him, that subject specifically. But the fact that you're being you and doing so, I think is the thing that's worthy of being proud of. And I'm glad that you said it that way, because that's exactly right. Only you have that. That what really matters is how you feel about it, and that's why you're doing it. What is it? So then let me ask you this: what is it? Why do you feel it's important to tell the story?
I believe that each of us are placed on this earth, and there's a path that each of us can walk down that only we can walk down. And I can't walk down your path, and you can't walk down my path. And success to me is walking down the path only you can walk down. And this is a unique path that I feel like for whatever reason, the algorithm favored me, gave me a boost, gave me some people, some eyes, some people to inspire. And if the path that I'm supposed to go down is to inspire people to bear my suffering with honor and dignity, then that's the path that I'm supposed to go down. So that's why I do it. It's just, I feel like this is my unique contribution to the world that I'm here to give.
And is that something that you have felt your entire life? Is this more recent? Where do you think this spawned from?
I just was always a weird kid, Joshua. I'm telling you, I was always just thinking very deeply, reading. Like I've been a big reader since I was like 10 or 11. And you read, most of these concepts are just things that I've read. And each point in my life, I've tried to lean in to whatever my purpose is at that point. So when I was like on the bench on my high school basketball team, I didn't get any minutes, but I was that kind of guy who would be in the warm-up line, like getting everybody's rebound, like giving everybody perfect passes. Like I'd be there making sure everyone had their towels, because that's just your role. You got to play your role, and your role is going to change in life. And I always tried to change with my role. When I was in college and I felt like my role was to, be a good student and to do some advocacy, I tried to lean into that. And for right now, like this is the role and the path that I see myself in.
If you were to imagine yourself, if you imagine a future, what is the next? Have you thought about what is it what is the end goal? What do you want to accomplish by the end of whatever path you feel that you're on right now? What is it? What do you see in that path?
This is something that I've learned from this whole loss, which is like, you can have your whole idea of the path and a big plan and exactly how you want things to go. But those things are really controlled by external factors. So if I were to give you some external goal, which I definitely have, it doesn't mean you shouldn't make goals and you shouldn't plan. It wouldn't be authentic as my internal goal. And the internal goal is what's going to stay consistent no matter what changes extrinsically. So for me, my internal goal is to grow in my faith. I think that doesn't have to be denominational necessarily, but just my faith in, the universe, my faith in the future, my faith in my fellow human beings. So growing in my faith and really growing in my relationships, because if I have my faith and I have my relationships, whether that's a romantic relationship with my girlfriend or my parents or my brother, or even just this relationship that we're building right now, those two are my internal drivers. So growing in my faith and my relationships In terms of external drivers, yeah, I have some massive goals. Like I have big dreams, and what's the point of living if you're not going to dream big? I wrote my brother a note last Christmas when I noticed we were growing apart, and something I put in that note was encouraging him to create more, to give more to the world. And I put in the note, life is too short to hide. I didn't realize how that would read later, but I still believe that life's too short to hide. And my big goal, I want to open a healing center. So you hear about gyms, right? Like, let's do a gym. Well, I want like a holistic healing center. Like we're going to do like meditation. We're going to do breath work. We're going to have some exercise equipment. You know, we're going to have these things integrated into one central space. So someone can show up after having a horrible traumatic event and can have a community and people to engage with. I see myself publishing books, traveling the world, giving lectures and speaking about my books. I see myself, you know, really just trying to be a symbol of strength and optimism and whatever opportunities I'm given to do that. I see myself going to law school. I really have all these big plans and dreams. I could go on and on, but those are really the big things I see for myself.
You mentioned something that I've been thinking about a lot about myself. You said something about faith in the universe, and I myself, I'm sure that then we will have something in common here. The the whole law of attraction, the whole like that. I believe a lot in that we create our reality, and for me, it's like a lot of times it's what I'm realizing is for me is a lot of times subconscious, both the good and the bad. So in my life, and maybe you can say, yeah, I've had a completely different experience, but then again, that's why these conversations are worth having, is that I realized that when I began to address my subconscious beliefs, it was also changing what I was experiencing in my reality. And so that's why the healing thing that you're mentioning is such a big deal. That's why battling those inner things that it's like, maybe I'm not good enough. Maybe no one will care. Maybe when I speak, people will ignore me. And that becomes your reality if you really believe that. So that's the goal, I think, for me anyway, right? Since we're talking about what the goal is, like with Win the Night, like it's community. It's because the feeling of subconsciously, I believed that I was alone in this, and so that was my reality. So it was alone until I decided that I'm going to go see if that's true. And I don't know what has it been like for you. What are you discovering about the way the universe works?
In terms of the subconscious and these internal and external realities, it's not a discovery necessarily, but just something that I've read that has resonated with me very deeply, even before we lost John, was just that the world without is a reflection of the world within. And that's a James Allen quote. And the world without, you know, the things that we see, the way we perceive things, it's impacted by how we feel about each other. That's what I would say. So when you're thinking well of everybody around you and you're wishing the best of all, you're learning to see the good in everything, your external vision is going to change as well. But if you're learning to see the bad in everything, and that's very easy to do, especially in a crisis situation. And you see people write things like this and you think to yourself like, oh, well, that's easy for you to say, like, you know, don't think bad things. And then you go through something horrible and you realize, actually, no, that's a universal truth. You know, after I lost my brother, I could choose to think that like I'm cursed and that this is going to keep happening to me and that I'm going to lose people who are close to me. And I could adopt these really negative beliefs. But the vision that I see, the reality that I see is going to be reflected based on what I try and keep inside. So I definitely agree with that. And it's something that resonates with me. That subconscious feeling is really overpowering, but you still can control it.
And when we talk about, at least like for me, like when you're a kid, there's this feeling for me that was like, I don't really have control over what happens in my life. And what I love about life is that you get put, at least for me, I'm getting put into, as we speak, the roles are reversing in parent versus kid, right? Like when you were a kid, you were you just believe that your parents, I believed everything that my parents like that they knew everything, that they had the solution for all of my problems. And when I grew up, I realized that they're human beings just like me, and that they don't know things. They have insecurities. They have things that they're unsure about. And the beautiful thing about life for me has been that I get to get put into their not in their exact spot, but I get to see it from what it is from their perspective of being an adult and realizing, okay, yeah, I don't have it all. I don't have it all together, and I'm actually still constantly figuring things out. But that humanizes it, right? Because as a kid, you see, there's like these phases that psychologists talk about, like you idolize, demonize, and humanize, and that is the experience that I'm having currently. Where as a kid, I idolized. I went through my teenage years where I started figuring things out. Then you demonize, and then realizing that they're human beings too, and that they have their own insecurities, their doubts, and that we're all in this learning. We're always going to be learning. That has been my experience. What can you say about that?
I mean, I agree completely, right? Like that's our role models, not just our parents too, but like our teachers, right? Like you think that your teacher knows everything about history or math or whatever it is. And then you realize, like, wait a minute, no, they don't. And for me, just something that this reminded me of is, and I think it's fortunate that it happened to me. My school would have like a raffle where, everyone buys little tickets and they give away an item. And I happened to win the first iPod Touch. I don't know if you remember that era. There was like the iPod with the buttons, and there was the iPod Touch. And the iPod Touch came before the iPhone, right? So it had just released. And my parents had no idea like how that works. Like they don't know what that thing does or what it doesn't do. And I got put into my hands as one of the first people in the earth, like on the whole human experience, to have a touchscreen device. And I was 11, maybe 10, I don't know, whatever third grade is. And I remember like having access to like Safari and putting in like, is God real? And like these big questions that I had. And I think that that's something that's changed with this generation of people and my generation going forward, is like, when you have those questions about doubting your parents, you have such quick access to information that you're able to see your parents' faults and flaws a lot differently.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah.
Whereas like if you grew up in a small town and you didn't have easy access to internet or computers or whatever it may be, you might not learn a lot about the world until you go move to a city. But you could really learn a lot from your room as a little, third grader, just Googling these questions about like which religion's the best religion, all these different questions. And then your parents, they're not going to have that all-knowing power that the internet has, and it can change those developmental cycles. And I'll be interested to see how psychology kind of adapts to account for that.
That's an interesting point. And in fact, you see that I've seen this virally about like on TikTok and Instagram, where you see kids say, hey, I don't know if you might have seen this, where you go, they say, hey, Chuck E. Cheese is closed or something like that. And the kid goes on the phone and or whatever it is, and it looks up, no, it's not, it's open, look. And they show it.
That's a big thing.
It's a huge thing, because as a kid, you would just believe whatever it is that you were told. And what you realize is that a lot of times you were told white lies to prevent whatever. I didn't want to. Didn't want to take you there, whatever it was. And so having that, now you're figuring stuff out younger. So I wonder what impact that would have on those kids learning that stuff earlier. Because when I learned it older, I don't want to say that I was sure. Yeah, I was more mature about it, of course, than I would have been if I was like 10. But it really does make me wonder, like, how is it going to impact their maturity? How's it going to impact how they grow up, how they see their parents? You get what I'm saying?
Yeah. I mean, I think it just creates doubt, especially I was, using Google back then. I'd imagine children now, age 10, are just putting into ChatGPT and artificial intelligence, all these questions, and probably getting a much better and more in-depth response. And those models are very affirming, right? Very affirming. So if you put in like, hey, my mom is getting mad at me because she says I'm using my phone too late, the AI will tell you, you're using your phone just fine. Like, and it'll, I think it's going to reinforce a lot of children to think that they're doing the right thing, even though they may not be.
Right. Let me ask. I'd like to focus a little bit in on what your teenage years were like, since we're talking about that age bracket. How would you describe yourself as a teenager?
Man, describe myself as a teenager. I'd say very different than I am now. The defining moment of my teenage years happened to me when I was playing basketball. So I actually was a pretty good basketball player at some point. I was pretty good, and I was a pretty good student. Like, I was ranked really high in my freshman class, and I was doing great in sports, and socially maybe struggling a bit, but things were pretty good. And I ended up getting a really severe concussion in basketball, where I totally forgot for a short period of time, like maybe an hour or 2 hours, who I was, like what was going on, where I was. And then within that same year, I got another concussion. So 2 concussions within a year. I think it really drove me to a dark place. I think that, combined with hormonal changes and just the development of the brain, I'd say it's pretty dark. Like, my teenage years were pretty dark. I don't look at them negatively, though. I kind of feel proud now that I overcame some of those dark moments, but they were definitely a struggle.
You mentioned socially that was a little bit difficult. Let me tell you something that for me, I talk to a lot of people now, but when I was a teenager, I was very closed off. I had my walls up. I was very judgmental about what I believed about other people. So once I believed, I thought I would guess who people were, right? I would be like, this person looks like they do this, and so that's who they are to me. And right. and that view of the world made my reality that, where it's like, well, that's why you don't talk to a lot of people, because there's a preconceived notion of who you think they are, and that comes from my own issues growing up of feeling insecure, and so we could rattle off a bunch of reasons why it was that I was that way. But what I'm trying to get at is, as a teenager, I think it's just crazy the difference that maturity, that experience changes you. And whether it's hardships or traumatic events, it's those events that you get to decide, what does it do to me? And that's where, for me, going into the Marine Corps changed me a lot. Accepting responsibility. In fact, this is something Jake and I were just chatting about before you joined, was that accepting responsibility is what had the biggest impact in both mine and his life, is him being a parent, and then me going through the military lifestyle, and coming back and accepting leadership too. When you accept responsibility, I think that's where life kind of begins to shift, because it's not about you anymore. Like, when you accept responsibility, suddenly you are in charge of the welfare of other people. And so that's where I kind of began, even though I'm not a parent. That's where I kind of, my shift of my view of what parents do and what people with responsibility for others do changed completely. And I was like, wow, yeah, this really isn't all about me.
Yeah, definitely.
That's what teenage life was like, where it's like, yeah, it's just about how I see the world, and that's really how it is. And a responsibility teaches you otherwise.
Definitely. I agree 100%.
So as we move into your early adult years, what do you think? You mentioned that era was really difficult for you. Where do you think that shift happened? Why did that shift happen?
Into it being difficult, or into it being less difficult?
Into it, because I'm assuming that you don't feel that way anymore, correct? Right. About life and the way things are.
Sure.
Where was that shift, do you think?
I think the shift, really, I think COVID is this thing that happened that nobody really talks about, but was like this really big thing that happened. And I had just started a job at the grocery store. So we're like, COVID was like, what, March 2020, right around there?
Oh yeah, right about there is really.
Yeah. So I went for my spring break senior year. We're out there having a great time, and then it got canceled. And then it was like, oh man, like the world is ending or whatever. And I had already signed up to work at a grocery store, just coincidentally on the very first day of lockdowns. And I remember my job was to be an in-store shopper for people's groceries. And we would get there at 5 a.m. I remember getting there at 5 a.m. one day, and there was a line like almost a mile long into the grocery store. But since we were the employees, we got there early. And I remember going inside the grocery store, and there was nothing there. And like, I'm talking about nothing, like no toilet paper, there's nothing. It had already been bought out. And there was a mile line going on outside. And there was just this moment where I looked around and I was like, wow, I never realized how helpless we all are. Like, we just think like we can go to the grocery store and get toilet paper. Like, I don't know how to hunt. I don't know how to make anything. Like, we don't know if this is going to end the world. And although people were saying different things about what the outcome would be, the reality for me and all my fellow, workers was that there was nothing on those shelves. And I just remember looking at that and being like, if this is it, then this is it. But if there's something after this, I want to make the most of it. And I don't want to live a petty life worried about what people think of me or if I'm being judged or judging other people. Like, I want to live a full life, and I want to do things that I never thought I could do. I want to really reach my potential. And for me, that was the moment where I feel like most things changed, when I was like, yeah, so this is crazy. The world is ending, but if it doesn't, I'm going to give it my all when it comes back together.
When you look back at it, it seems a little bit silly. Looking back at it, how scared everyone got. But in the moment, at the time that it was happening, like, we really didn't know. And it was obvious that everybody else didn't know. And
no one knew.
And so that's why everyone just kind of like was at the edge of their seat, like, what's going to happen next? And that vulnerability of wow. But doesn't that address also how it's not, we've been too self-focused, where it's like, it's very much about the me lifestyle kind of came to not to an end, but it came to like a head, like a crossroads, where being a community, we're better when we're in communities, when we don't just think of ourselves. Because at the end of the day, if something like this happens, like, our best chance of survival is sticking together.
Yes, but you'd still see people get into like petty beefs about like,
absolutely,
that's my paper towels, and it's, you really look at it and you're like, who do I want to be? Like, I don't want to be that person, I want to be generous. I want to, give to people. I don't want to take as much as I do right now.
It was 100%. It's a reflection of what we were. And honestly, that was a huge turning point for myself too. Like, I was going to go in a completely different direction. I was looking in, at that time, 2020. I was thinking about being I was an instructor for an instructor at a MMA gym. I was a conditioning coach, and so I was helping a lot of the guys. Some of them were getting ready to fight and all that stuff. So I would help them get conditioned, and I was also wanting to follow that path and hopefully get into MMA too. But that changed everything. COVID shut everything down. It ended a lot of plans that I had then, but then it also led to this, because it was very me. And that's when I think about it, right? Because it's a very selfish sport, no matter how you look at it. Like,
yeah,
when you get into fighting, it's very, like, you hear about people married that leave their families for weeks and months at a time to prepare for camps and all that stuff. And so for me, like, it was very much about, like, yeah, I'll do all that, and in chasing this goal. And COVID changed that. It was the idea, the realization of, like, yeah, it's very me. And I don't want to live that way. When I got to reflect, when I got to actually sit down, everything quieted down, because COVID slowed everything down for me. I don't know how it happened for you, but for me, COVID literally had me sit in my room like a kid that was disciplined, and just sit in my room and think. And doing that was what really helped me hone in on, okay, who do I really want this?
Yeah,
so
I that was my experience too. I was like, so it was March. I was going to school in August, and I'd already signed my my dorm lease. Like, I was committed, and I got to my dorm, and like, it was like shut down. Like, you don't talk to your neighbors. You're not supposed to talk to anyone. It was online school, and I was in a dorm, and I didn't have any friends, and I didn't know anybody, and I was supposed to have a roommate, but because of COVID, no roommate. And I just sat there for a whole year, just figuring things out, making a plan, thinking a lot more than I probably would have if I would have got thrown into college the way that most people did.
So yeah, that was really the changing point, right? So then COVID, let's get to more current events. Currently right now, what do you have on your plate? Like if you looked at what it is that you're trying to get done, let's say for the year, what is it that you have on your plate? What would you like to get done this year?
I think that once you suffered such a great loss, you kind of zone instead of from yearly thinking to just like, let me make it past Christmas.
Oh, I understand. Yeah.
Like, let me make it past the new year. Like even just thinking right now about how that's going to feel to go into this new year without my brother and without him being there at Christmas. For me to try and think about like what I want to do next September, it's just not happening. It's not going to happen. And I'm okay with that. And when I look at like, what do I want to do this upcoming year? I've stopped thinking that way. And what I've started to do that's really helped me is what do I want to do every day? Like, what are the things that I want to do every day? And for me, that's like running a mile every day. I just do that every day so that I can get out of bed. I try and meditate every day, do my breath work every day. If I can just keep adding more everyday things, then I have faith that the yearly vision will take care of itself.
I understand what you're saying, 100%, and I think that that's good that you do that, because when you have all this on your plate, a lot of times, I guess you don't always see it that far, because right now you have a lot of things to deal with, and the everyday, just getting through the day, I think is a good place to start, and a good place to,
for sure. Win the morning, win the night, right? Like, let me just try and take care of today. And if I can do that, I'll be good. And if I just do that every day, then I'll be good. That's just how I think about it.
No, I like that. I think that that's important. We are getting a little bit close here on our hour, so I'd like to kind of go through some things that maybe we haven't chatted about behind the scenes that you'd like to share. Is there anything that is important to you that you want to get on air?
Wow, there's so many things that I really think are important. The first thing that comes to mind, I don't want to say like I was an alcoholic or addicted to any type of drugs in particular, but I imagine that some of the people listening to this have their own relationships with their vice, whatever that may be. Pornography, gambling, alcohol, drugs, whatever it may be that is your vice. I recommend just really, before you engage in that activity, and this has helped me a lot, am I healing or am I coping? And that one question has been of great benefit to me when I'm doing something that maybe isn't the best for me. And if I accept that it is coping, that I am doing this thing to cope, at least I'm giving it some thought that this is a coping mechanism instead of automatically engaging in the behavior and never really addressing why it is that this is happening. So that's like the number one thing for people who drink a lot. You drink on the weekends. It's a Friday. I want to go drink with my friends. Are you doing that to heal, to like get closer with your friends, to really feel involved in your community? Or are you doing that because you're going to be anxious and uncomfortable and you're coping with those feelings? So that's I don't want to get too much on my high horse or preachy, but just ask yourself that question when you engage in your vice.
Addiction. I remember that was one of the things that we had chatted about before this conversation, and I think that it's an important topic. Addiction. I think everybody, you talk about, say, vice. Vice is something that I think to some degree we all have, at least from what I've experienced, people I've talked to. Some like we talked about before, right? Like some people idolize some vices. You talk about, like, let's say, for example, for models, the popular thing is to be as thin as possible, and a lot of those models end up having, if not all of them, end up having some form of a eating disorder, and so those vices are not necessarily celebrated, but they're not demonized. A lot of times they're promoted for those type of businesses, and they make money, and that's one addiction that is seen in a positive light. And then other addictions, for example, like we mentioned, pornography and drugs and all that, those are obviously socially unacceptable and frowned upon. And yet, I've had plenty of conversations with people who've experienced that. And I think the reality is, you said it's coping, right? But it's also avoidance. It's also, I don't want to feel, right? That's what it comes down to, is I don't want to feel what it is that I felt growing up, or whatever it is that activates that for you. It's the avoidance is really what it comes down to. So you're right. Like it has to do with, are you doing that because you're improving? Or is that making you closer to people that you care about? Or are you trying not to feel?
Yeah. I think that people don't even realize that that's what they're doing, though. That's where I was. If you were to, some of my friends from college are probably going to watch this and they're going to be like, really? Like Dylan's talking about this right now? And that's just how it is. Like for me, there's a period in college where like I was getting drunk every single day for like 4 months straight, like that. And at that time, if you would have pulled me aside and said, hey, what are you doing right now? I wouldn't have been like, oh, I'm coping and throwing away my life. I wouldn't have even had an answer, because I just was doing it. And avoidance, I think, is coping, because what are you trying to avoid? Probably a feeling of negativity. Mm-hmm. So you're not really, I don't think that many people are even trying to avoid boredom, especially with the amount of things that we can do in our society.
Oh, fair. Yeah.
I think that people are really just avoiding negativity, and that's what coping is, right? Like doing something destructive to avoid feeling negative. And I just think that it's really not thought of in that way.
Now, this is something that I've been able to experience, and is still actually something that I haven't mastered and will likely not master for most of my life, is the feeling part. Because the intellectualizing is something that I still do to this day, and that has helped me not feel negativity, is to intellectualize the problem. Because if I understand the problem doesn't, then the problem can go away, because I can solve it, and it doesn't remove the feeling. And in my now 3 years of going to therapy, I'm still not great at that. Like I still get called out about it when I'm in therapy. Okay, like you've explained to me why you're feeling what you're feeling, but what are you feeling? Because that's the part we're not getting to. And it's avoidance for me, because of, as a kid, I learned that I wasn't, my feelings weren't allowed. My feelings weren't, I had to essentially, what's the word? Look to stabilize, make sure that my parents were okay. And as a kid, that's a big responsibility that isn't for me. And I had to learn to mask my feelings and cope with them and intellectualize. And when you do that as a kid, well, then you don't feel when you're an adult. So that's what I've been learning, is relearning how to feel it. Because feeling negativity doesn't mean that I become that I am, that all of a sudden. In fact, when I allow myself to feel negativity, I can feel positivity. I can feel love. I can feel connection. Because if I'm numbing myself entirely, I'm removing all the other great things. I'm not allowing myself to connect because I'm avoiding, because I'm numbing, and that has been the trial that I've been going through, and one that I relate to you when it comes to addiction. Because for me, intellectualizing the problem, looking for, and for me it was relationships, like dating. Like that was for me, for my early 20s, that was my addiction, was if I could just get some level of attention, like I could just escape everything. And that's coping, like you mentioned.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's, definitely hard to think of it that way when you're in it. But once you get out of it, you definitely can see like, oh, I just wanted to get into that relationship, when I was in my early 20s, just because I wanted to not have to think about all my problems and like just be in puppy love and just be fully focused on that feeling. Like it is coping, even though you would think to yourself it's healing. It wasn't actually.
No.
At least that's my experience.
Yeah. And I would like to ask you a little bit about that if you're comfortable with it.
Sure.
What was your experience like with dating?
I feel like when what you know about dating, I think for the most part is from the people around you. Like your first preconceived idea of like what is dating, My parents got married, when they were minors basically. And they've been married this whole time, like until, they're in their 60s now. So they've been together that whole time. So they don't really have much advice on dating. You know what I mean? Like they're not going to give me good game or good tips or good anything on dating. They don't really know anything about it.
Yeah.
And, my older brother, he didn't really talk to me much about it. And then, you have like the media. And I think about like high school, a lot of feelings of rejection just because I was super uncomfortable with who I was, but still wanted relationships and just being that weird guy who's like probably asking a girl out that he should not be asking out. And I went through that phase. And eventually in my first relationship, I was at the point where it's like, I just want a relationship, this needs to get going. And I think that for me, I made a series of mistakes in relationships. People, that's just how it goes. And I think it's definitely a form of coping. Interestingly, my brother, before he passed, when I was a sophomore in college, he said something to me that I've been thinking about a lot. John, he said, all you know how to do is work a job and have a girlfriend. And I didn't know what that meant at the time. I thought I almost was kind of proud of it. I was like, yeah, I'm a hard worker and, I have a relationship with my significant other. But I hear it now and I'm like, yeah, what he was trying to say was like, you don't make enough time for me. You don't know how to be a good older brother, or you're not focused on that. And I never thought to myself when I was spending time in my relationships that I was sacrificing time with other people close to me. It's definitely something that I regret.
Yeah. I mean, that's hard to hear too. Especially because like, I don't know how it was for you, but for me, there's an unspoken rule. In fact, I just had a conversation with my younger sister this morning about it. We went to breakfast and she had said, hey, thanks for reaching out. I feel bad that I don't reach out to you as much. And I said, I don't see it that way. For me growing up, there was this unspoken rule that the older brother is responsible for reaching out to the younger sibling. And she's the youngest, so she hasn't had that experience herself. And I said that it wasn't until she was born that I understood that rule, but it's unspoken. Nobody ever said I had to do that. It was just a rule that I understood to be the rule, right? Like I'm the older brother, so I
agree. Yeah, definitely. I felt that. I mean, I see that now. Like I felt it eventually. Like I guess, yeah, like I'm 18, he's like 14. I should be asking him if he wants to go play putt-putt. He's not going to really, like in the movies or like the TV shows, maybe the younger brother's like, hey, we're going to hang out with me. But that's really not how it goes. At least in my experience, I agree with you on that.
I think I also hope, by the way, that you are able to forgive yourself for not being perfect, for not being the perfect role model all the time. Like you guys aren't that much apart, and even if you were, I mean, we're all still learning. Like I mentioned to you earlier, I realize that this is happening for everybody. There's just no way to have perceived everything that you would have done wrong until after the fact. Yeah. And I hope that you don't feel guilty about that.
I know we're closing out on time here, and I think that I want to share something that may be a contradiction to what most people believe, because a lot of people will message me and say, there was nothing you could have done. Like, this wasn't your fault. This isn't, you didn't do this. And I don't think that line of thinking is actually particularly helpful. People on the outside tend to say that, or maybe even people who have experienced it themselves also will say that. But I feel is more significant is to say, like, no, there was something I could control within this situation. At the time, obviously, if I would have understood the results of my actions, I wouldn't have done that. I was operating from a position of ignorance, and I forgive myself for being young and ignorant. But that doesn't mean that I'm absolved from the bad or unideal things that I did. And it's not necessarily my fault, but there were things that I could have done better. And I forgive myself for falling short. But I think it's super important to not just wipe all your mistakes under the rug and be like, I forgive myself. I didn't know any better. No, think about those things. And now what do? I think about how I wasn't there as much for my younger brothers. So now what do? I try and be there for my older brother better because I've experienced it. So try to take, as you said earlier, some of that responsibility. What is responsibility? It's like the ability to reason, right? Basically, and try and use that past experience to inform your current reason to try and fix those mistakes. Don't pretend you made no mistakes. It's kind of pointless.
Yeah. Well, that's very mature of you for you to do that, because owning the mistakes, we can own mistakes without feeling shame. And I think that's really what it comes down to, is we can take responsibility and say, okay, I could have done this better. I could have done that better. And in fact, I will in this way, and have a plan for it and grow that way. And I think that we can do that with not beating yourself down all the time about it, like, because it's done. At the end of the day, right? Like, it's over. It happened. And to say, like, to shame yourself is one thing, and then to take responsibility is another. So I guess let me rephrase that. I hope you're not shaming yourself over it.
The shame that I feel is immense, but it changes every day. And the more that I heal, the less shame that I feel. And, to not have shame, that's just I can't think of a single person on this. If you have no shame, then you're just a narcissist, right? like you're just some type of psychopath to a certain degree. And I think shame is a powerful emotion, and I try not to hide from my shame. I try and think about the things that I'm ashamed of, that I shouldn't have done, the mistakes, the shortcomings, and think about how it's going to make me a better person for those around me, and for those that I get to influence, and for those that I get to inspire.
Yeah, man. When I hear stuff like that, I hear, oh, man, I guess it's because, like, I've been in that position, and I can't help but, like, hear, a kid that misses his brother, and man, I don't know. I empathize. I feel for you, because still, I mean, you're 24, right?
Yeah.
I mean, there's so much still for you to live, still so much for you to see, and I hope, man. Yeah, I feel for you, brother. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I mean, it is what it is. I mean, at this point, you just can't hide from it. Life's too short to hide. Gotta embrace it.
I agree with you. We're closing out now. There are a few questions I ask every guest.
Let's do it. I have time, so let's do it.
Perfect. First question is, we've already discussed it a little bit, but if there's anything else that you would like to share with where people can follow you, where it is that people can support you, now's a good time to share.
Yeah, you can support me on Instagram, continue to work. You can also donate to my GoFundMe. I'm writing a book in my brother's honor, and the donations to that help me avoid my day job and focus on the creative process.
If you've discovered purpose, what do you think it is? And if not, what do you think it might be?
The only purpose that I see is to think well of all people and to learn to see the good in all people.
If you could speak to your childhood self, what would you say?
Just keep working. I think all the negative, I wouldn't try to avoid any of the negative experiences that I had. I would really just encourage myself to continue to keep going.
Dylan, I really appreciate all the time that you've made for this. And I always do my best with guests to make sure that we're having a agreed upon conversation. So I hope that I've honored that with
Absolutely.
you today. And this is a continued conversation. So I'd like to keep tabs, if I could, check in on you from time to time and have a conversation about life. I hope that we can continue doing that, and that together we can show people that we don't have to be alone through this.
Yeah. To all those people out there, win the night. If you woke up today, you're winning. Joshua, thank you so much for a wonderful conversation. And I have a feeling that I'm going to be back here in July to promote my new book. I'll definitely make sure to get you guys a copy early. And thank you for this opportunity.
I'd love to read it, brother. Thanks for sharing, and we'll talk soon.
All right. Take care.
Take care.